Evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 10th Planning Commission meeting. If we can all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll have roll call.
Messina?
Here.
Fleming? Here. Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip? Mandel?
Here.
Rumpler? Ward?
Here. Can everyone hear me okay back there? All right, good. I need approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of, let me get the date, February 13th, 2018.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, we have public comments, and public comments is anything that isn't on our agenda. So if there's anyone sitting in the audience that wishes to speak on something else that, other than what we have coming up. No? Okay, thank you. Hillary, staff?
All right, good evening, commissioners. I have a few announcements. Our first one is that we have a new planning technician. So Jake Plagerman has joined our team. He's here tonight. I'm not going to embarrass him and bring him up, but when I went to welcome him, it's so nice to be fully staffed again in the planning department. So he's a great addition. We have a few things coming up in the next few weeks. I'll wait on my one announcement because I have a few slides for that. But the week of April 23rd, we have some things for the Atlas Waterfront. So there is a public open house for Atlas Waterfront that will be at 6 p.m. here in the library community room. And the following night, there will be a joint workshop with City Council and Ignite, CDA, 5 p.m., also on that same topic on Atlas Waterfront, and that one will be at North Idaho College in the Student Union in the Driftwood Bay Room. The comprehensive plan, you received some feedback from Sean Holm. He'd gathered comments from community members, and we were able to provide that to you in a summary format on what people liked, didn't like, and suggestions for the comprehensive plan update. And he also distributed comments from all of you, so thank you for your help in doing that, and we're working on scheduling the next workshop. So moving forward on that. And in May, it looks like we have at least one, possibly two items that'll be coming before you for the May meeting. And then the last two announcements are on East Sherman. So we have a brand new website for East Sherman. The short way to type it in is just eastsherman.org, and that'll take you there, and it has all kinds of project information and ways to sign up to get information and to volunteer and information on what we've done to date. And next week, we have our big event. We have a design studio. It's a multi-day design studio. Community builders and their consultants are going to be here for several days. They're going to arrive in the afternoon on Monday. We're going to do some driving and walking tours with them. Tuesday and Wednesday, during the day over at the chamber at the visitor center, they're going to be there doing design work, and so that's open to people to come in. The public can come and take a look and see what's going on. They're basically going to be building off of information that's already been gathered from community members, and then on the evening of Wednesday, April 18th from 5:30 to 7, also at the chamber in the visitor center, there will be an open house, and that's going to be interactive, and that will be the opportunity for the public to really weigh in and provide more input. The other two are just during the day, people can kind of see the process, the design work evolving. So that's all. Hope everyone can attend. Thanks.
Okay, great, thanks. A lot of stuff. The commissioners have any comment? Anyone wishes to say anything? No? Okay. At this time, we'll have one of the administrative items be heard. Hi, Tammy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So this is a fairly straightforward request. It is a request for an extension of the Planning Commission approval of item SP 117, which was a density increase for an R34 special use permit. The property is located on the south side of Saltese Way, and the Atlas Mill site is abutting it on the east, west, and the south side. The above noted special use permit is set to expire on June 4th, 2018, And due to active and ongoing dialogue with the city about a possible land swap involving the subject property, the applicant is requesting an extension of the special use permit. That extension, if approved, would extend for 1 year, and it would expire June 4th of 2019. There are 4 prior conditions that would also go along with the approval. And tonight, we're asking the commission to look at either by motion grant an additional 1-year extension of the Atlas Mill Development Corporation special use permit to allow for additional time to come to a mutually agreeable term with the city on a possible land swap, or the planning commission may by motion deny the extension of the request.
Okay, thank you. Have any questions of Tammy, anyone? No? Need a simple motion?
I'll motion that we extend this for a second 1-year extension.
Okay, got a motion by Ingalls, need a second?
Second.
Second by Ward?
Second that, yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And SP-1-17 is approved. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're gonna, oh, you got something, Mike? No, you can come on up if you want. I just got to say a few things. So we're going to open public hearing. There are 3 quasi-judicial items on the agenda, and the way this is going to work with some of the folks that haven't been here, there's a sign-up sheet for each one of these, and if you wish to comment on any one of these 3 items, just make sure you sign up on the sheet. If you are in favor or not in favor, there's a checkbox. If you wish to speak, there's a checkbox to say yes, and then you can come up and you'll have 5 minutes to testify. And if you don't wish to speak, that's okay as well. Just indicate whether you're in favor or not in favor of it. The applicant will come up and have 30 minutes. Public testimony then will be spoken at 5 minutes, and then the applicant will come back up again and answer any questions that might have come up during the time that you might come up and say something. And at this time, I'll let Mike go ahead.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for item S-1-18. The property owner Schneider Company and Schneider Brothers. The applicant is Greenstone Kootenai 2. They're requesting approval of a 130-acre, 12-phase subdivision in Coeur d'Alene Place PUD. As part of this request, the applicant has proposed 429 single-family lots, 3 C-17 lots, 6 C-17L lots, and 10 R-17 lots. The property is located immediately west of the intersection of Wilbur Avenue and Ramsey Road. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on March 24th, 2018, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's a location of the property. This is Prairie, this is Ramsey, this is Lake City High School. This is the last piece of property that was part of the 760-acre Coeur d'Alene Place PUD. This outline in red is the subject property. This is Ramsey Road again. Here's a bird's eye view looking north. See, this is Ramsey Road and Prairie. And this is a bird's eye view looking west. There are 7 findings that need to be met in order for a subdivision to be approved, 7A through 7D. The first one is B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested by the city engineer. The city engineer has indicated that the preliminary plat submitted contains all the general preliminary plat elements required by the municipal code. Here's a map of how the subdivision is proposed to be laid out. This is all the single-family residential lots on this side. This is Ramsey Road, this is R-17, this is C-17L, and this is C-17. This is the proposed phasing of the subdivision. Phase 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can see they're kind of moving at a northeasterly pattern. Finding 7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. The city engineer has indicated that Ramsey Road currently includes curb and gutter. Completion of the shared use path on the west side is required. In regards to traffic, the city engineer has indicated with nearly 500 residential units planned with this development, a traffic study is required to assess the need for a traffic signal at Wilbur Avenue and Ramsey Road. This is the proposed utility plan for the project, showing where the utilities are going to be located. The remainder of the city staff from water, fire, parks, and water departments have reviewed the application and have indicated that there are adequate facilities and utilities available to serve the proposed request. Finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all the subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvement standards. Per engineering review, the purposes of the preliminary plat, both subdivision design standards and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. There's been an amendment to the staff report on page 10 that says that all new streets shall be constructed to the Coeur d'Alene Place PUD approved street design standards. And I just wanted to make note of that. And finally, the last finding is finding B7D. The lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. The lots in the proposed preliminary plat meet the minimum frontage for 40 feet of frontage per lot as approved in the 1994 item PUD-2-94. Setbacks of future buildings are tied to the setbacks that were approved in the 1994 PUD. Proposed conditions. Streets and Engineering has two proposed conditions. One is a traffic study is required to assess the need for a traffic signal at Wilbur Avenue and Ramsey Road, and completion of a shared use path along the west side of Ramsey Road is required. Prior to this hearing, the applicant has received a copy of the staff report and has indicated that they are okay with all of the proposed conditions, except they have a concern with number 1 that they will address during their presentation. And this is all other conditions. The applicant has indicated they're okay with the proposed conditions from water, planning, wastewater, and parks, and the full list is on page 11 and 12 of your staff report. The Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my presentation. Our city engineer is also here to make a brief statement as well.
Okay, before you leave, any questions, Mike? Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
We were going to have Chris Bosley step up and clarify that condition before. Can we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Chris, we'll have you go on up. Thank you.
Thank you. I was asked to come up and just explain my position on this, and I'm Chris Bosley, city engineer. You know that already, but for the record. So the reason why I put this condition on my response to this PUD is because Wilbur Avenue already receives a lot of traffic, and with, as you know, Wilbur Avenue is connecting between US 95 and Government Way in the next couple of years, with a signal going in at US 95 and Wilbur, and at Government Way and Wilbur. And with this continuation of Wilbur, I see a lot of traffic trying to cross Ramsey mid-block between Hanley and Prairie. If we don't put in the signal, I feel that if it is warranted and it doesn't go in, then a lot of traffic is either going to take their chances crossing Ramsey or just go down to Hanley and overwhelm that already busy street down there. So I just wanted to kind of get ahead of this and make sure that we're thinking about the traffic impacts that this large development would produce. And I understand that it was not included in the 1994 PUD, but over 20 years has passed and things have changed. So if you have any questions for me, I will stand for them.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you being here. So it kind of leaves a question mark in a way. It's, you know, the condition says we're going to do a traffic study. When are we going to do it? And then what? You know, so let's say we do a traffic study before recordation of final plat or by phase 3 or whenever. It doesn't say when, and it doesn't really say then what, you know. So if the traffic study comes back and says, oh, everything's great, no worries, no need for a signal or any kind of adjustments at that intersection, that's one outcome. Another outcome would be that the study says we really need, say, a signal there. So what? So then what? You know, you know, is that part of our analysis tonight in, you know, moving this forward? Is, you know, with a question mark like that. So let's assume the case that it results in the need for a study, a signal. The study concludes that with this many lots, would the impact fees generated be enough, perhaps with some city partnering, to provide a signal there, 200K, whatever it costs to do a signal? Help me understand some of that.
Right, so my intent was that if it did meet the warrant, then I would like that to be, the signal to be constructed with the development. If the warrant comes back and says in 5 years or at this many house build out, you know, percent of build out, then the warrant would be kicked in for the need for that signal. Then at that time it could be put in, but otherwise then it would not be required. I wasn't clear in my statement on that, but that was the intent of it.
Is there a reasonable expectation of funding for this? I mean, that there's kind of a need for something there today. You know, I think that's, you know, a little bit of an issue right now, correct? Coming and going from Wilbur as it is today, even without this development.
On the east side of Ramsey Road, it does present some potential safety issues there for people turning left out of there mostly.
But do we anticipate that the developer is then to pay for that full improvement at that streetlight and crossing space and so on? Is that once it's indicated that it's required, is it now his burden to pay the full ticket?
In my ideal world, yes. I know not in their ideal world. But the fact of the matter is that when these developments come through and then a signal is warranted later, it comes out of Streets and Engineering's budget. And we install a signal to mitigate the traffic that was developed from all these homes being built.
Okay.
Any other questions, Chris? Oh, thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chris. Okay, Kevin?
Okay, which one is it, the left or right one? Okay.
And Kevin, before you start, since this is quasi-judicial, I have to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
Just name and address for the record.
My name is Kevin Sneidmiller. I'm here representing the applicant. I reside at 6552 East Octavia Court in Post Falls.
All right, you got 30 minutes.
Again, I'm here representing the applicant in the matter of the Coeur d'Alene Place preliminary plat. The first exhibit you see in front of you is the Coeur d'Alene Place, as was mentioned by Mike. 750 plus acres that has been built out over the past 20 plus years. We anticipate that it will be completed in the next 5 to 8 years, depending on market conditions. The existing zoning, again, as pointed out by staff, is R8, PUD, R17, C17, and C17L. The total site of this proposal is 130.54 acres. The net area less right-of-way is 106 plus acres. 9.59 acres of open space is proposed in this preliminary plat.
Again, we're proposing uses consistent with the existing zoning. Total of 448 lots, 429 of those are single-family, 10 multifamily, and I combined the C17 and C17L, 9 total lots. A density, and I'm speaking of the residential portion, of 4.27 units per acre gross and 5.57 units per acre residential. I do want to take just a minute to talk about the open space. Obviously, as you can see, that's below the 10% required as part of a PUD. The reason for that is that anytime you do a large master plan community, it's very difficult to have 10% open space for every phase or proposal, preliminary plat that we bring forward. I can tell you that at the end of build out, we'll be at close to 14% open space. The exact number is 13, just a little over 13.4%. The reason for that is we chose to front end significantly open space at the beginning of Coeur d'Alene Place. Some private parks, pathways, public parks. Bluegrass Park was done very early. The soccer field, which we partnered with the city on in providing the land for those. Those were all done several years ago. So we've been, over time, we've been significantly above the 10%. This proposal is slightly under that, but at the end of build out, we'll still be significantly over the 10% required. This is just a map showing the proposal. I do want to point out one item here. The main north-south street through this, Mosaic, which starts at Corsellis and will terminate at the north boundary of the property. There's also a sewer line running that will be running through that. We've reached agreement with the sewer department and the developer to the north. We're going to partner with them and provide a route up front. That will happen actually in 2018 to build that sewer line, which will allow gravity sewer to flow south, which will prevent the need for a lift station in the Vista Meadows subdivision to the north. So, and that is all worked out. Again, as staff mentioned, we have 12 phases. This is very consistent with previous preliminary plats that we've brought before the Planning Commission regarding Coeur d'Alene Place. They've always been in the 8 to up to 15 phases, depending on the size of the preliminary plat. Again, as you can see, we're proposing that development will move from the south to the north. Phase 11 and 12. Phase 11 is the R17 designation. Phase 12 is the C17 and C17L designation. We're kind of holding those to the end. Always what we've found in Coeur d'Alene Place is it's kind of market driven, and whether those will remain with the current zoning, the market will dictate that as we move forward. Moving ahead, I'm kind of dealing with the flu a little bit. So again, you can see 429 lots, all front entry at this point, all proposed to be served by public streets. 10 lots of R17. The product will be determined at a future time when we come forward with actual approvals on those. Same with the C17L. In closing, we've reviewed the staff analysis and recommended condition. We agree with all the staff comments and proposed conditions with the exception of the one that staff has mentioned on page 5 of the staff report regarding traffic. We do not agree with the comment that an additional traffic study needs to be completed. And the reason for that is when we first proposed Coeur d'Alene Place over 20 years ago, in 1994, the traffic study was actually commissioned in the latter part of '93. There was a traffic study done on the entire site, including these 500 lots. These are not new lots being added to Coeur d'Alene Place. They are always a part of it. In fact, when we did the PUD, we also did an initial preliminary plat that covered the entire, at that time, 640 acres. Then in 1998, we came forward with the only major amendment to the PUD, and an amended traffic study was done at that time. So our plan and development over those 20-plus years is very consistent with the original plan. So Coeur d'Alene Place has not added any traffic impact to the Wilbur and Ramsey intersection. At the time in 1994 and again in 1998, it was not indicated by those traffic studies that there was a need for a signal. Now I'm going to completely acknowledge, because there's no question, a lot of other changes have taken place in and around Coeur d'Alene Place, including to the east, the one that Chris mentioned with the extension of Wilbur from 95 to Government Way. Our position is we should not be responsible for those. Again, in 20-plus years, our traffic counts have not increased. In fact, at build-out, I'm quite confident that I can stand here and tell you that our density will be less than was originally proposed. And the reason for that is we had a lot of cluster housing areas showed in the original design of Coeur d'Alene Place, and those were much smaller lots. We've done only a couple of those where there was 6 or 8 of them proposed originally, and so our density is going to be less, which should indicate that traffic counts will be less. I'm not disputing that, again, there's been a lot of growth in and around Coeur d'Alene Place. There will be additional growth in the future. But for us to be solely responsible to perform a traffic study when we did what we believe is proper master planning, and we think that's good for everybody. It's good for the developer. It's good for the city to be able to look forward a long ways down the road and know what's going to be needed. All of our major residential collectors, residential streets are in significant conformance with, again, the original PUD plan. We've built and constructed Hanley. We've made improvements to Atlas. We have Corsellis running north and south through the project, connecting to the adjacent subdivisions to the north. So again, I'm not going to dispute that there's additional traffic, and there may be a warrant for a traffic signal at Wilbur and Ramsey. I'm not questioning that. What I am saying is that we don't believe it's the responsibility of us as a developer of Coeur d'Alene Place to be responsible for the traffic study and whatever traffic mitigation might or might not come out of that study. So other than that, we worked through some items with staff on sewer and things, and we feel very comfortable with the rest of the proposed conditions that staff's brought forward. So we request your approval of the modified preliminary plat and plan unit development, and appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Any questions of Kevin? No? Okay.
Okay.
Probably see you back. At this time, the people who signed up, I'll read their names out. I have a number of them that are here that signed up but didn't check any boxes. So when I call your name, just either let me know whether you're in favor or opposed to the item that we're speaking about, and if you wish to speak, just come on up and say your piece. If not, just let me know. First person, I have Tom and Kathy Boyce. Hello? Do you wish to speak? Are you here still?
Maybe not.
No, thank you.
Okay. Jerry Alexander. No? Are you in favor or opposed to the? You need to, that's why I asked everyone to fill this out so I can say it, and it wasn't filled out. So
Yep.
Go ahead.
Can we have you come up to the podium, sir?
I'm Jerry Alexander, and I live on Kalispell up in that, and my concern...
All right, I just need to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Help me God.
And your name and your residence, your address, please.
I'm Jerry Alexander. I'm on Kalispell, North Kalispell.
Okay,
It's
what's your
just,
street address?
Along Canfield Road.
Do you have a street address number?
6739 North Kalispell Drive.
Thank you very much. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes, 5
Out
minutes.
of all the projects, I never got to see the complete map, what it's going to look like, but my concern is that many houses in that area, I can't see how we can get by with the traffic with no lights or anything, because right now you get down to Ramsey and Hanley during traffic hours, it's unbelievable. And when you go up to Prairie, same thing. It's, say, in the morning and in the evening, there's almost a half a mile of traffic. And these people got to go somewhere, and I don't know how we're going to get that without lights.
Okay.
Is there any way we can exit maybe to the west somehow to get over to Atlas?
Well, that would be up to the developer, and the developer has some time later to
But
speak
from what I
about
see
it.
up there, it's just the one road coming out into Ramsey, and I think that's going to be a heavy traffic area. And I vote for myself to have traffic lights to start.
Okay.
That's all.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Next, I have Tom and Leanne Abel. Again, you wish to speak? Sure. Then come on up. Just need to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Name and address.
Tom Abel, we live in Coeur d'Alene Place, 2063 West Russo Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a concern about traffic impact because we live there and it's already heavy. And I noticed you're talking about developing the south end of this plat first, and yet Wilbur is way north. And so I would assume all the traffic is going to be coming up Canfield, which is between Wilbur and Hanley. And so we're concerned about the traffic impact there. It's already heavy. There are people crossing there. There's no traffic signal there at all. And I can just imagine if all this starts coming in from the south, the development starts coming in from the south, it's all going to be coming up Canfield because they're going to be building Canfield up first. And so that's our concern. We think it's pretty heavy already, and it seems like it's going to get a lot worse with another, whatever you said, 400 new houses coming in here.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Margaret Veggie, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce it correctly.
Right.
Did I do okay?
You did very well.
Well, thank you. You didn't fill out the form, though.
I didn't realize I had to.
Okay, go
Swear?
ahead. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, your name and your address, please.
Name is Margaret Fedgie. I live at 6755 Kalispell Drive. And my concern is the same as you've heard so far, is the traffic. Right now, from Kalispell, you have to go onto Canfield to get out onto Ramsey. And there are days you can't do that. I have to go around to Hanley. And as everybody else has said, it's a terrible, with the high school getting out, it's very crowded. And if the only other way out is going to be north of there, I just see the traffic on Canfield just increasing tremendously. So my concern is mainly the traffic and how can we safely get out to Ramsey without endangering, particularly the elementary school people with school getting out, people taking their children to elementary school and picking them up again. The traffic is heavy as it is. So my concern is just the traffic, and I think we need another light, whoever pays for it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stefan Romeo? And you did fill out the form, so thank you.
I know. That was the first one.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, please.
My name is Stephen Romero. I reside at 2546 West Malroe Drive in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
I have a prepared statement, so forgive me, I'm going to read most of my response.
Sure, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I've timed it, so I'm good there, no problem.
Okay.
But anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Again, my name is Stephen Romero. I'm a current resident of Coeur d'Alene. I moved here initially with my family in 2004. I'm here to ask you one simple question regarding this proposed development. Where will all these kids go to school? Within only a few miles from Lake City High School, Woodland Middle School, Ramsey Elementary School, and Skyway Elementary are numerous new housing developments. Lake Forest West, Garden Grove, The Trails, Park Rose South, and other continued additions within Coeur d'Alene Place, and those are just to name a few. Also within just a few miles are new and expanding apartment complexes off of Ramsey Road just south of Kathleen, Apple Way next to Winco, and one new 300-unit complex directly across the street from Lake City High School on Hanley. Every one of these is located in the northwest part of the city. So I'll ask you again, where will all these kids go to school? I've become aware that the city now keeps the Coeur d'Alene School District in the loop with regard to housing developments being built in and around the district. However, it hasn't always been that way. So to me, it then begs the question, how can a community grow responsibly and yet have limited communication and no collaboration between the city, developers, and the schools that will be tasked to protect, nurture, and educate the youth of our community? Having 2 kids currently enrolled at Lake City High School, the continuous, seemingly unchecked development in our city has caused me concern. When Lake City High School was first built just over 20 years ago, it was built for a total student population of 1,200 or so students. My daughter is a freshman at Lake City High School, and her freshman class has 700 students alone. So let me just kind of reiterate that. When the school was initially built around 20 years ago, it was built for a student population of 1,200, and the current freshman class at Lake City High School has 700 students alone. Total enrollment to start the 2017-2018 school year was 1,634 students. Even with the addition of 10 new classrooms at Lake City High School, funded by the taxpayers from last year's bond measure, they still are not even close to having enough classrooms and teachers to get to a reasonable class size. The school is beyond capacity today. While I'm in no way against growth in our community, I ask those here tonight, can you say with complete confidence that we're growing in a responsible way? Are we growing in such a way that keeps the youth of our community at the forefront or even in mind? Are we growing to their benefit or to their detriment? Idaho currently ranks 48th in the U.S. in education, 48th. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. Only 2 states are worse, 2. And yet here in this community, we have overcrowded schools and no place to build new schools because the only land available is sold at a higher price to developers versus the community and school district that so desperately needs it, especially right now. I get the sense that public meetings like this have for too long become a routine, city-mandated meeting to rubber stamp the next development. At what point do we as a community say, wait a second, if we keep this up, we'll have no land left from which to build new schools to keep pace with our explosive growth. I have discussed this issue with school administrators and members of the Board of Trustees. The theme I hear from all of them is that times are as desperate as they have ever seen. If this development is approved and the construction of 457 new homes is allowed to commence, I ask again, where will these kids go to school? The schools locally are full. They are beyond overcrowded, and portables are no longer a viable option. We have all witnessed with horror and sorrow the many recent school shootings across our nation. School safety has become a preeminent issue. It's not enough just to expand or build new schools. It's also become vital to make every school in our community a place where students feel safe and parents like me feel confident that everything possible is being done to ensure their safety and security while on school grounds. And yet if we continue to overload these schools with way more students than the schools are securely able to handle, are we then not doing them and our community a disservice? I'm not so much here to say no. I'm asking that you as a planning commission say not now. That you take a proactive, long-term approach towards responsible growth in our city and direct and the direct or indirect effect it will have on the youth and students of Coeur d'Alene and Hayden. I would also ask, and I strongly suggest, that going forward, all new developments that directly or indirectly impact our schools be reviewed, not just in communication with, but in collaboration with our school district. This has to happen. Because if we don't, and we continue to allow development after development to be built without this, I ask you for the final time tonight, where will all these kids go to school? Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate your enthusiasm when someone agrees with your thought process, but if you can refrain from expressing that enthusiasm, it would be appreciated. Thank you. Next, I have Bill Petit. That is correct way of pronouncing name. If you're still here, you left. You said you wanted to speak. No? Okay. Vincent Street is opposed. Didn't you want to come up, or you're? Hi. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Name and address, please.
My name is Vincent Street. I live at 2072 West Canfield Ave. I have numerous concerns about the development. The number one concern would be, like the last gentleman, with schools. I have a son who goes to Skyway Elementary, and as we all know, it's expanding along with the high school. You know, how many more portable classrooms can these schools add on? So, sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, but so schools are number one concern. Obviously, another concern is the traffic. I live on Canfield, and it is a nightmare already, turning left off Canfield onto Ramsey. A lot of times I have to drive around, go down to Hanley and turn around. So traffic is a huge concern. Other concerns with the development is obviously environmental, sewage. Where's all this going to go? They're building God knows how many developments and houses around this place, and where's all this sewage going to go? So that's a concern. Obviously, another concern would be with the emergency services. You know, do we need to add more police, more fire, all that stuff. So I think this is a huge project, and I think for our community, it's a lot to take on right now. So I think it's too much.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Thank you. Sandy Rustad? Didn't check it.
That's me, but I think all the comments
But-
have been made.
No, if you want to say so, you need to come up to the podium. I can't hear you, first of all, so. And I do need to raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Yes.
Your name and address, please.
Sandy Rustad, 6795 Kalispell Drive.
Okay.
And I have the same concerns with everyone else. Canfield, I use that every day. It is in very poor condition. And this year, during the winter, was especially bad because we had a lot of snow. People park on both sides of the street, so many times only one car could get through there at a time. So, and if you've ever drove down that road, it's very rough. Potholes been fixed umpteen times, so it's in desperate need of repair right now. So moving forward, something needs to be done with that street. And then at the end of Kalispell, right now is a cul-de-sac, but there's enough room for a road, like, you know, there's an empty lot. So I can't really tell by this if they're going to make a road there or if they're just going to have a path or what the existing. Is there any way that we could have copies of this, or is it available online? Does anybody know?
Yes, the packets are available online. We can give you a link to that website after, but cdaid.org.
Okay.
And then we'll show you how to get to the Planning Commission packets.
Okay, thank you. And just one more concern.
Sure.
I've lived in this house for 16 years, and that's a ranch style. So when they start building behind my house, hopefully the development developers taken concern that I prefer not to have a huge two-story house built right behind me so everybody can look right into my backyard. It would be nice, you know, if they could just build a rancher, in back of a rancher. You know, because there are other two-story homes on that street, so they could put the two-story homes behind that.
Okay.
So those are my concerns.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have Janice Gogurlands. I destroyed that name and I apologize. Is she here? Do you? Okay. Isn't opposed and does not wish to address, and I apologize. I have Chris Jensen, is neutral and does not wish to testify. I have Shay Mulligan, is neutral and does not wish to testify. Chris Schneider is neutral and does wish to testify.
I signed the wrong form.
Oh, then you have to leave.
I realized the forms were different. I'm here for Cottage Grove.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Ajen Singh is neutral and does not wish to speak. And Mary Beth Bowens, and you do wish to address us. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, please.
My name is Mary Beth Bowens, and I live at 2044 West Canfield Avenue, and that is in Coeur d'Alene Place. My first concern tonight is one that you've already heard about Canfield Road. I know we've spent a lot of time addressing Wilbur, but Canfield and Ramsey right now, it's a nightmare. The potholes on the road, I've contacted road maintenance. We continually, our road is very rough. As was previously addressed, we often have cars parked on both sides of the road. So it does turn into a one-car road. And we have school, Skyway Elementary, that we have parents loading and unloading kids in the morning and the afternoon, and also access to the soccer field. So that road stays quite busy. My second concern is with the schools. I have spoken with staff at Skyway Elementary, and they cannot have any more portables added to the school because of drainage, they were told. So Skyway Elementary is already exceeded capacity, and so there is no more room to build on at this point. Also, so I have one child at Skyway Elementary, one at Woodland Middle School, and one at Lake City High School. My daughter at Lake City High School talks about needing to get to class early enough to get a chair. There are physically not enough chairs in each classroom. She has several teachers which are roving teachers, which means they use the classroom of a teacher that has a prep period. The teacher can't even prepare their lessons in that classroom because the roving teacher needs to come in and use that classroom to teach it. So it makes it confusing for her at the end of the day to know where to actually go find some of her teachers to ask for help on her schoolwork. Before we continue to add more homes to this area, it's been addressed previously tonight, we need to figure out where we're going to put these students. My daughter has a teacher right now that has mentioned to the class several times that he's looking for work in Washington. One of the obvious things that always comes up with that concern is, well, they're looking for a higher paycheck. But his concern actually has been that he's raising to the students is, I'm tired of having a classroom that doesn't have enough seats, that has so many students, it's overwhelming for the grading, and next year I'm looking at having more students in my classroom. They don't even have enough textbooks. They have to go to the library after school to use textbooks. I'm also concerned with having less than 10% of space for the open area. Yes, I understand in the long run, Coeur d'Alene Place may exceed that 10%, but in a new area with over 400 houses, I think we need to have 10% of space. There's going to be an influx of new families with children. People are going to want to have an area to recreate. Bluegrass Park is already quite busy, and it doesn't just serve our neighborhood. In the summer, special needs and recreation comes there quite often. Summer camps that are held in the area come and use it. So by no means are the parks in the neighborhood just exclusively for the residents in the neighborhood. So I urge a lot of caution before we go forward, and that a traffic assessment really needs to be done at Ramsey and Canfield. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I have, that was the last person I have on my sheet. Is anyone who did not sign up wish to speak on this matter? If not, that, you do? Come on up. Is she on it? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your name and address, please.
It's Leanne Abel, and my husband already spoke, but there was something
Okay,
to
that's
add,
fine.
that's all. 2063 West Russo Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Coeur d'Alene Place. Have lived there since February of 2002. When I did choose to buy a house in Coeur d'Alene Place, I was attracted by the amenities, such as the trails, the open space, et cetera. And I knew at that time that there was development planned for that, the field, that's all what I call it. But my comment right now deals with the intersection there at Canfield and Ramsey. I work down toward 95 and Kathleen, so I'm generally coming up Ramsey from the south. I get to the turn lane there to go west on Canfield, and I have had so many close calls there. I have had people who are waiting at the stop sign on the east side of Ramsey on Canfield, zoom in front of me. I mean, I'm in the turn lane. They are passing in front of me to go west on Canfield. They are going behind me as I'm sitting in that turn lane. And and another example is I am waiting to turn south on Ramsey from Canfield. This would be in the morning. And there are people who are trying to beat the traffic coming south on Ramsey, and they turn so closely to the traffic at the stop sign there that I am surprised no one has been clipped. So it's just another comment about the traffic, but that intersection specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I will have, Kevin, you want to come up and perhaps address any of the concerns you have or add to your...
Yeah, again, I'll just address kind of broadly three of the topics that came up in kind of a broad way. The first one, again, the traffic. We're not disputing that there's additional traffic in the area of Ramsey Road. That's not our question. It's who's responsible for solving the issues that may be present. Again, when traffic studies are done, they determine the warrant for improvements, whatever those improvements may be. So we understand there's additional traffic. It's come over a long period of time. That's not our question. It's who's going to be responsible for taking care of whatever issues a traffic study may determine are there. Again, there's been recent development on the east side of Ramsey Road, and if that topic came up then, I understand that. But if it didn't, maybe it should have. But again, we as a company, we've always been willing to be part of a solution to a lot of problems. So we're willing to have discussions with staff and about all the issues. The other one is the gentleman that brought up the concerns with schools. Again, we as a company have been strongly supportive of the school systems in all the communities that we do business in. We continue to do that. We were supportive of and in a large way made available the possibility for Lake City High School to be built where it's built, the same way with the elementary school. While the middle school is just to the south of the project, we were also implemental in making sure that that happened. We provided some infrastructure to make these happen, made the land available, and so we understand, again, not only as a company, but my family personally has been very involved in education and strongly support it. So we understand those concerns, but again, we don't think it's, you know, our responsibility to have to solve all those issues singly as a company. And finally, open space. Maybe I didn't address that clearly enough, and I understand the comment about there's two types of open space. There's open space that's publicly owned by the city, and there's open space that's privately developed and owned by the homeowners association. The privately developed open space that's owned by the homeowners association is still available for use by anybody in the city of Coeur d'Alene. It's not exclusive to the residents of Coeur d'Alene Place, and so as we develop what we call pocket parks, and we find those to be much more effective because you can space them. We try to space them in an 800-foot radius, and as you can see here, we've got two pocket parks proposed that are, one is in the 1.5 acre range, the other one's about 1 acre. Those will have some type of activity programmed into them, more than likely some playground equipment. We've been considering in the large one possibly a small splash pad, water park. Those are very popular, and we've done those in other locations in our parks. So again, I just want to clarify that while they're developed and owned by the homeowners association, they're for public use throughout the citizenry of Coeur d'Alene, not exclusive to Coeur d'Alene Place. And we know that takes place now. So, and we support that. And that's why we develop an extensive trail system that connects to the other neighborhoods adjoining Coeur d'Alene Place, so that people can use the open space in Coeur d'Alene Place, and also the kids have good access to the schools that are located in Coeur d'Alene Place. So, if there's no questions, I'll stop there.
John, you got a question?
I do. I have comments and questions. I totally comfortable with the open space. Coeur d'Alene Place is very generous, and I don't think that really is a concern within the phases or within the project overall. I think that's comfortable. Schools is the other issue you touched on. Can't argue that there isn't concerns there, but you know, when planner Mike Beharry presented, you know, he gave us the findings that we have to work with tonight, and right or wrong, you know, the schools are not one of the findings we make tonight, and so maybe a concern. Having said that, there is tax base that comes with this, and that jumps to the next item. I talked before about impact fees and so forth. There's money that will come from these homes to go into a pot to help with something like a signal as well. I am, you know, very concerned about the signal at Wilbur. My gut says we need one. I can't, you know, empirically say that without a traffic study. But in my mind, as you point out yourself, two things in your own narrative, you kind of tout the positive, and I believe it, that this is a new east-west route between Hanley and Prairie, and that's a good thing for both the folks that are here and the future folks, and that's a good thing, and you tout that in your narrative, and I think, yeah, let's get behind that. That's great. I'm all for that. You also say that there has been a lot of little iterative growth on the east side. And is this no different than when you connect to a sewer pipe? You know, when it was built, there's always a little capacity in there. And when the onesie-twosies come along and take some of that capacity and take some of that capacity, it fills that. And then when a big player comes along, you go, hey, this is going to tip this thing over perhaps. We need to study that pipe to see, you know, if that new capacity can fit. You know, and if it doesn't, the developer's on the hook to run
a whole new line or whatever it takes to make that good. So if you go back to the date you did the original traffic study, a lot has changed on the east side. I think it almost needs a signal now, regardless of the new homes. You know, and granted, some of that capacity in the pipe, if you will, in the metaphor, has been given up, and now we see this, you know, 429 homes. I think there's real concern there. So I'm going to ask you point blank, you know, if we leave that condition in there, where are we at?
Well, if it's left in there, obviously we have, you know, we have avenues to look at the commission's decision, and we will certainly do that. You know, I'd like to make 2 points. One is, again, we had a proposal 20-plus years ago, and all we can deal with is the traffic that our project is generating, okay? And these 429 homes were part of that proposal, and the traffic study made certain recommendations of improvements that needed to be made, including to the Wilbur and Ramsey intersection. I'm going to stand right here and tell you they fell far short of a signal. But based on the number of homes that we were going to produce over the life of the project, which was around 2,000, including then on top of that some multifamily units, that is what the traffic study showed was warranted, generated by the traffic that Coeur d'Alene Place was going to create. Again, I understand, Commissioner Ingalls, that a lot of things happen, and unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of time, you know, to have bigger discussions with staff. I think part of our issue is the condition as it's written is very general and very vague, okay? Because again, we understand every home pays impact fees, not only in Coeur d'Alene Place, but throughout. So, you know, a traffic study is going to come back and say, these 429 lots, homes, are responsible for 5% of the traffic, 10%. It's definitely not going to be 100% of the traffic that's created at Hanley or Ramsey and Wilbur. So even a traffic study, I'm confident I can stand here and tell you, is not going to show that those 429 lots are going to create a large percentage of the issue related to that intersection. So we're certainly, again, we're a company that participates actively with the cities and jurisdictions that we do business in. We're going to continue to do that. But again, I think one of the commissioners, maybe it was you, Commissioner Ingalls, that pointed out the way that is written, it really doesn't suggest what the outcome should be. And I understand why. You know, there has not been a traffic study done, but it doesn't say that it's suggesting that Coeur d'Alene Place and we as a developer are responsible for 100% of that intersection or what. And so that's a little bit of the hard, difficult thing for me to stand up and you know, answer directly to what that is, because we don't know based on the way that's written. So, but very likely to answer your question, we will likely, you know, what we prefer to do is to have further discussions and try to get clarification on what that means. But at the end of the day, we have the right to appeal a decision. And I can tell you that this is a big issue. It wasn't raised. We've brought forward 9 amendments to the Coeur d'Alene Place PUD. Very many of them minor. They're listed in the staff report. But not at any time has this issue been raised. Not in '98 when we brought a major amendment, and none of the successive minor amendments. So that's also a little bit of our problem. But again, our way of doing business is we want to find a solution that works. But you know, part of that, it has to work for us also.
Any questions? To touch on that subject, as far as the traffic study goes, as long as I've been on this commission, there's been a number of developments in that area, and I believe this is the first time I've seen a condition put in for a traffic study. Usually there is a traffic study done at the time when applicant comes in for subdivision and, you know, the engineering department comments on that traffic for that particular number of homes. This is the first time I've seen myself a condition. I'm not saying that a traffic study isn't warranted in that area, because I live in that area. I know exactly what everyone's talking about. I travel that corridor many, many times, and it is congested. But it's I believe, a result of a lot of different developments. Also, I've got another question. You have a number of phases. What's your timeline on build-out for this? 'Cause,
Again, you know, we're projecting 5 to 8 years.
Right.
If the market stays reasonably well, we've been at this. If it goes to 5 to 8 years, it's going to be over 25 years. Obviously, it was a large master plan community. So we've got a lot of history that things can slow down. We do know they probably won't speed up much more than they currently are, because we do business in the Spokane, North Idaho market, and you know, this is just not a market like some other big markets where you see a really accelerated growth. I mean, if you look historically over the last 50 years, this market has been one that's been more steady. Certainly, this business has its ups and downs, and what I always say is, we know that will happen. We don't know how long the downs will last or how long the high markets will last, but we know it will go up and down. The history in this business tells you that. So it could be 10 years.
Sure.
I mean, that realistically it could be. But that's our projection. We look historically at how many lots we've developed and built on annually. We think we've got a pretty good sample because we've been at it so long, and this is not our only master plan community. So we've been pretty good at being able to predict, you know. So short of a situation like we faced in the mid-2000s, we think that's a pretty good timeline. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, if nothing else, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, wait, one more?
Not to beat this horse to death, it's probably already dead, but those of us up here have a finding B7B we have to make tonight, B7B, that says that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian bicycle facilities are or are not adequate. And then we need to espouse why we decide that they're adequate or inadequate. And with respect to streets, we've heard a lot of testimony that Canfield and Ramsey is not so great. And this would only maybe impact that a little bit more. You know, if Canfield is kind of an example of a little bit of a feeder, I'm not going to call it a collector, but a feeder to Ramsey, you know, Wilbur is a pretty super feeder, you know, and it's going to become a super Canfield. And if there's no signal there, I'm really concerned. So, yeah, I don't know how we make this finding, B7B, that the streets are adequate as we sit here. You know, it seems like there ought to be some kind of a middle ground tool here of sorts, of some kind of partnering effort. You mentioned percentages or something that you know, partnering on a solution, and I don't know if we can solve that in this forum. But.
Yeah, and I understand the difficulty that you as a commission faces. But again, you know, I'm not sure how that obviously, as far as the development that we're proposing is presented, we are providing the adequate street, sewer, water, fire protection, and so forth. I don't know how you deal with that issue. You know, that's a decision that the commission has to make. You know, it's kind of an age-old problem. So I can tell you at Canfield and Ramsey, and you know, I'm in that community all the time on an almost daily basis, and I share some of the concerns with the Canfield and Ramsey. But when we built the development that a lot of the folks that spoke tonight live in, that was kind of the only development there. And I can 100% tell you that a traffic study would have shown no warrant to build a traffic signal at Canfield and Ramsey at the time that we extended Canfield out to Ramsey. So, you know, that's just it's kind of an age-old problem, honestly, and so we just have to work our way through it. But again, in closing, it's you know, how that condition is so open-ended that I think if I sit here and look at it, that's really our concern, because we can't be in a position where it comes back and 100% of the funding of whatever a traffic roundabout, a signal, whatever might be decided goes there, that we're responsible for funding 100% of that. And right now, the way the condition, I can't be assured that wouldn't be the outcome. So, okay? Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to clarify something, if I may.
Yes, that was,
Okay,
go
so
right ahead.
the commission asked, has there been any other projects that required traffic studies recently? There actually have been. So
Okay.
there was a few, I think, at least 2 projects, maybe 3 fronting Prairie Avenue recently that required traffic studies to be done to see what their impacts were and how the traffic would be mitigated and how that would affect the roadways. There was also one recently done for Staybridge Suites in Riverstone, just because of concerns with the proximity of that to the signal at Lakewood. So it's not something that's unusual. There was one at least one in the past. I don't remember if it was Fred Meyer or one of the other projects as well. So that there has been precedence for that. And it would be helpful. Randy was visiting with Chris Bosley, city engineer, to see if he would be willing to clarify that condition just for consideration by the commission based on comments heard tonight. So thought it'd be helpful if we can have Chris come back, read his condition to you, and if you want any further clarification, since this is obviously a big discussion
Sure,
topic.
Chris, you can come back up. But to comment on that the prior one you said about traffic studies being done, were they request of traffic studies being done, or was they a condition put into an application at that time?
We will have Chris speak to that because he probably remembers more the specifics, but they were conditions.
Okay, great. Go ahead,
So
Chris.
I just wrote this on the fly, so.
Sure, it's okay.
But because of the uncertainty of what my condition stated, I revised it based on our discussions. And the way it's written now would be, a traffic impact study must be completed by the applicant to determine the need for a traffic signal at Wilbur Avenue and Ramsey Road. The study should be completed prior to construction of the proposed development. If the study determines that a signal is warranted, it shall be installed by the applicant prior to the projected year of need. And that's basically what I had told you before, but that is in writing what I feel. And I understand their side of things too. And as far as playing splitsy on cost, the problem that we run into is things like Canfield having potholes on it, as we heard tonight, and we're trying to keep up with growth and repair roads and put in signals and maintain signals, and then $250,000 projects come into our lap like this that would just delay repairs in other places.
Okay, so there are other subdivisions that were asked to, as a condition to do a traffic study, and whatever the results of those were, whether it was a traffic light or whatever, that burden was on the developer at that particular time for that application when there was a condition in there. And I apologize if I misspoke, but I really don't remember one being a condition in any of them. But if there are, you know, in the last year or so, or 2 years, or when were those, Hillary?
The one, I don't, was it Vista Meadows or Garden Grove is one of those, and it was, I think it was actually the highway district that required it, but it was one of our conditions we included, in that they had to evaluate the traffic impacts and make sure that how that was going to impact the prairie. The Stabridge Suites was another one. That one was a design review commission project, and that
Mhm.
was a condition that we had added before they proceeded with that. I don't remember, you were thinking there was apartment project as well? Yeah.
I don't know of others.
But the
Okay.
conditions,
Happened
as
while I
they're
was here.
written, assume the responsibility of the applicant, as they're written now, or they have been written. The outcomes of that, if there's a responsibility for the applicant, the full burden is borne by the applicant.
That's what is revised.
This was revised one.
His
But you're
proposed,
speaking of previous conditions, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly how those were written, but I know that, for example, in the Stabridge Suites, the traffic impact study came back saying that it wasn't going to overburden Riverstone Drive or the signal at Lakeshore Drive, or at Lakewood. So there was no follow-up with that one.
Chris, to clarify, on that one, if there had been a need, how did we determine the responsibility for cost of improvements if something had to change at that intersection or access location? We talked
Right.
about if there had been a warrant for a median or something to restrict left turn lanes or something, would that have been the full cost of the applicant to bear?
Correct,
That
yes.
improvement, okay.
Yes, but it never went there.
But that
And-
would be the end result.
Right.
If there was a traffic study saying, yes, we need a light at Wilbur.
Right.
Greenstone would be essentially responsible for the cost of that traffic light.
What does a
Correct?
traffic
Yes.
study cost like this? Is it 50,000?
No. no, It's a
25,000?
few thousand. I don't know
2,000?
the exact cost.
what does a signal cost?
It's $250,000,
Yeah.
especially on a wide street like that.
Spanning 5 lanes, it could be a bit more than that, towards 300,000.
But, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate. This project was started 20 years ago, probably in planning. And since then, the crush from all around keeps coming. Why is the last man on the ship have to pay for all that other cumulative impact? It's coming from Hayden, it's coming from Post Falls, it's coming from straight downtown because nobody wants to drive on 95 because you're going to get run over by a logging truck. So why are we, last man on board has to get stuck? And I'm of the mind that this is a chronic problem throughout the whole city. And why should this portion get the whack? I think that we all, as citizens, own this problem. And that each development added another 10, another 20, another 50, that we own it, just like we own the problem of the schools that are now bursting beyond the seams, and yet we keep on doing this. And I don't think, and Wilbur may be a good solution to the Canfield issue, because that is a raceway. I know because I do it to the airport all the time. So it's a raceway from Prairie all the way to Hanley. People just floor it. So they're not paying attention to whoever's coming out on Canfield. Good luck to them. So I understand exactly the problems, but that's not this development's problem. It's coming from north and south. And so I don't think we should make the point man be the last payee. I think this is a chronic problem. And we do have to do something in that stretch. And I've noticed there's a little more police patrol, but not that much. They do watch speeders, but not enough and not at the right times. So I don't think that last twist that you've added is appropriate. That would be my concern.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, I have a quick question. What do you foresee as the scope of a traffic study? Because I was thinking earlier, I've seen a lot of studies as this area continues to grow and with all the development all the way north, up into northern parts of Kootenai County for that matter. Government Way is certainly struggling to handle the flow as it goes north in toward Hayden. I mean, ITD studies have shown that, and I'm guessing that 95, until that's all cleaned up, and I know that there's plans for that, it is pushing some traffic over to Ramsey as a north-south bypass to 95 to some degree. So I believe that there's some of those. That's why I'm asking, what do you foresee as the scope of the traffic study? Because again, to say all that traffic that's going up and down Ramsey, which is causing these residents, these concerns, they could be coming out of, areas up by the airport for that matter.
And Chris, I had a similar, just to build on Commissioners Fleming and Ward, is the focus on Wilbur and Ramsey sufficiently broad enough to do a traffic study for the whole traffic issue in that corridor? It seems that it spans north and south even beyond Wilbur. And so for the purposes of this applicant and our findings, that's the main crossroad, which I understand. But is there a bigger traffic study in which this needs to be nested for us to understand the true attribution for new development versus the broader growth in the community?
The traffic study of this type would be focused on just doing a signal warrant for that intersection, not, I understand there's a lot more traffic on Ramsey that's coming from the north and coming from the south, and this is independent of that. It's the traffic that comes up on Wilbur to Ramsey, and how do they get in and out, or how do people, turn left into there when they're coming home. That's the reason for the study. I know we have all sorts of other traffic issues in other parts of the town, and this is not meant to kind of delve into those.
I mean, at full build-out, there's no question, there has to be signalization at Wilbur when this fully builds out. But I think we can't wait till then. I don't think we can wait till then. It's only going to take a couple of head-ons, and, we've got that Canfield. I see it. I see it. It's dodge around the traffic and watch people wail by at 50 miles an hour. So I understand. But again, I don't know that we should put the burden on this developer. He's not the full cause of this. In fact, he's a fraction of the cause of this.
I think that's true, but I think the reality is life isn't always fair, and sometimes the latecomer that comes along, the capacity, like I said, analogously or metaphorically with a wastewater pipe, Chris, is no different, right? I mean, there's pipes all over town. If I pull a permit across the street and put wastewater into the pipe, if it has some capacity, away I go, correct? Mm-hmm. And everybody iteratively does that. But if all of a sudden I want a big high-rise, something that's pretty significant in a vacant lot that I kind of thought 20 years ago the capacity is there, but it's been given away, that's no longer there, then it's my burden as the latecomer to deal with that. Is that not true? It isn't fair, and that's, the traffic on Ramsey is today what 95 was 20 years ago, because the traffic north and south using it is a bypass. And we've added a lot of stuff on the east side that comes out from Wilbur, that dumps out there now, and to come out onto Canfield or future Wilbur with 20-year ago traffic, it'd be easy to make left turns and such, but it'd scare me to death, to put that kind of volume out there. And I'm comfortable with the open space. I think this is a great project. Speaking of wastewater, I commend the developer. Mentioned that, and there is an analogy here with wastewater, and this fixes a lot of the wastewater issues up in that quadrant, doesn't it? And as Mr. Schneidmiller mentions, they're taking care of things such that we don't end up with a lift station, and that's very commendable. The late great Sid Fredrickson, who I admire, used to say that he hated lift stations, and he used to say that all sewers should be gravity because God never sent me a bill for gravity collection. So, kudos on the sewer, but I support your rewritten condition.
If we have any other questions for Chris? No? Okay, Chris, thanks. Could we possibly get a copy of what Chris wrote so we can?
Yes, we'll walk it up to you.
All right. And at this time, I'm going to close public testimony, and it's going to come to the commissioners for discussion and hopefully a motion. So I open it up to discussion, if there's more discussion.
I have one comment for those commenting on the schools and the overcrowding. As a parent of children in the Coeur d'Alene School District, I appreciate you raising that. I think it's very important. I share the same concern about all the growth in the northwest corner not being addressed by school planning and having enough schools in that quadrant of the city. And I'm sorry that doesn't fall within the findings, because I think it warrants a lot of concern. I hope you've shared that with the school district. I would ask that maybe the city could comment on how the process for addressing growth in school planning and the comprehensive plan will take place in the next phase of comprehensive planning. I think it's important. I think it's on everyone's radar. It doesn't fall in the purview of tonight, but I think it warrants attention. So I wanted to thank you for raising that. I think it's a big issue. The second one is around finding condition number 10. We have a comment from the DEQ. Is that relevant?
It's blanket. They're applying it to
Okay, it's
everything.
just that, so condition 10 as it's written is sufficient to address the comment coming in from DEQ?
Yes, and then there's also in our city code for construction, there's a requirement to have the watering trucks and the dust control measures and all of that, so the fugitive dust control, so I think.
So condition 10 as it's written is sufficient to cover, okay.
Yes, that plus our city code.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, did you want me to clarify Commissioner Mandel's comment and question about how staff works with the school district on
Sure, go ahead.
school sites and all of that? Okay.
Yeah.
So the city staff and administration actually do actively work with the school district. The school district has reached out to us recently. We've met with them and looked at possible sites and tried to figure out what would be any challenges or what would be their pathway forward for bringing those either into the city if they were not in the city limits, or if they were in the city, what they would need to do to have schools at those locations, and gave them any suggestions or concerns with traffic, et cetera. The school district has a long-range planning committee, and city staff, we weren't able to attend this past year due to being sick and some other conflicts, but they've invited city staff to that, so I know that they have an active committee, and we're trying to work more closely together on our long-range planning. With our comprehensive plan update, we are definitely going to be working closely with the school district on that, because it's a big concern. I know we need to work on that as a community to make sure that there are future school sites available, as well as looking at existing sites the school has, and in the future, how can those be maybe repurposed or made to be larger, expanded, and suit the needs of the community.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm going to take a shot at a motion here, and I'm going to say that we ought to support this PUD change, or the subdivision S118, with the rewritten condition from the city engineer, and I'll crawl through that in the form of making findings, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I would say that as far as this item S118 for 448 single-family lots, 3 C17 lots and 6 C17L lots, and 10 R17 lots, applicant Greenstone, Kootenai, for the area west of Ramsey Road, east of Corsellas Parkway, south of Alp Street, north of Hanley Avenue, as discussed tonight, that we would adopt the findings that are stated on page 1, B1 through B7. And with respect to the 4 other findings, B7, 8, that we would make a finding that the preliminary plat requirements have been met as attested by the city engineer. As planning staff mentioned on page 3, there's an acknowledgement that all preliminary plat conditions have been met. That we make finding B7B that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are adequate with the revised condition pertaining to the traffic study, that we make the finding that with that safeguard, that all of those items are adequate and protected. B7C, we make the finding that the preliminary plat does comply with all the subdivision design standard, and that is based on the statement in the staff report on page 7 that the subdivision design has been vetted for compliance and that all the preliminary plat requirements have been met with respect to subdivision design standards. B7D, make the finding that the lots in the proposed preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district, and that is based on comparison with the minimum lot size, street frontages, and as the developer points out, the density is actually well below the 429 lots, or well below the theoretical potential of 768 lots. So that finding is there as well. So with that, Planning Commission would, pursuant to the aforementioned, find that the request of Greenstone Kootenai for preliminary plat approval should be approved with the 13 conditions, and I'm not going to read them all, that are in our finding worksheet be adopted, but condition number 3 under streets and engineering be struck and replaced with the language that was provided to us here tonight, which I'll read one more time just so that we have clarity there for the record. So that replacement condition 3 would be, quote, a traffic impact study must be completed by the applicant to determine the need for a traffic signal at Wilbur Avenue and Ramsey Road. If the study determines that a signal is warranted, it shall be installed by the applicant prior to the projected year of need. The study should be completed prior to completion of the proposed development. That's the motion.
I have a motion, and I'd like to, if there's any discussion on that motion, before I hear a second. Okay, looking for a second then.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Ingalls and a second by Ward. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina? Oh, not you. Lutrip? Rumpler? Ward?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
Okay. Item number S-1-18 passes with the new condition in it. I thank you all for coming who were here for this particular item and who spoke. The applicant does have the ability to appeal this to the City Council, and if the applicant does so, all of you who came here can certainly go to that City Council meeting when that item is on the agenda. Thank you.
And vote for school funding.
Okay. The next item is a quasi-judicial SP-3-18. Applicant is Miller Stauffer, 401 West Garden Avenue, proposed R34 density increase special use permit. Mike?
Thank you. This is item SP-3-18, application of Patrick Acuff. The architect is Miller Stauffer, requesting a special use permit to allow density increase to R34 for a proposed 8-unit multifamily apartment building in the C17 commercial zoning district. The location of the property is located at 410 West Garden Avenue. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on March 24th, 2018, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's a location map showing where this property is located. This is Northwest Boulevard. This is Memorial Park. This is Garden Avenue. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. The applicant is proposing to remove the structures and build an 8-unit apartment building in this location. Currently, there is 9 units located on this property. There's a 8-unit apartment building here and a single-family dwelling here, and there's a shop here. So there'll just be a net decrease of 1 unit. The current zoning only allows for 5 units, so that's why they're requesting the special use to get the R34 to allow the 8 units. Here's a site plan of the project, showing the building located here and the parking in the front. Proposed elevation of the structure. There are 3 findings that need to be met in order for special use permit to be approved. First finding is finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The 2007 comprehensive plan indicates this area in the historic heart, and it's in the stable established area where neighborhoods are fairly established. The comprehensive plan objectives, I've put 3 here on this slide. The full list is on page 10 of your staff report, but objective 1.12, community design. Objective 1.14, efficiency, promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to underdeveloped areas. Objective 3.01, manage growth, provide for a diversity of suitable housing forms within existing neighborhoods to match the needs of a changing population. The historic heart area tomorrow, as labeled in the comprehensive plan, indicates that there will be an increased density in harmony with long-established neighborhoods and uses. Sherman Avenue, Northwest Boulevard, and I-90 are gateways to our community and should reflect a welcoming atmosphere. And stakeholders must work together to find a balance between commercial, residential, and mixed-use development. The next finding is finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. The next slide shows site photos of the property. This is across Garden Avenue looking northwest. This is the single-family dwelling, the 8-unit apartment building, and this is the shop. This is on Garden Avenue looking west. This is on the northwest part of the property looking west. And this is on the center of the property looking west also. This is across the street on Garden Avenue, looking north along Northwest Boulevard. There's a zoning map of the subject property showing it's currently zoned C17 with the C17 zone surrounding it and C17L to the east. Existing special use permits in the area. There's a special use permit in 1993 for a skate park located right here. And here's the land use map indicating commercial uses to the north. There's a gas station located to the south, and civic uses located to the southeast and across the street. The last finding, finding B8C, that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This application has been routed throughout the departments, and each department has indicated that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. There are 4 recommended conditions, 2 by the water department, which is any additional mains, extensions, and/or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the developer at their expense. Number 2, any additional service will have cap fees due at building permitting. Streets and engineering, the driveway approach will need to be located as far from Northwest Boulevard traffic signal as practical. And finally, planning has, the applicant will need to meet the parking requirements for residential uses per the zoning code. The Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my presentation. I can stand for any questions that you may have, and the applicant's also here to make a presentation as well.
Commissioner Ingles has a question.
Thank you, Mike. Good report, as always. And I apologize, maybe I missed it in here somewhere, but on parking, you know, your condition number 4 says 16 parking places correct?
That's correct.
When I look at that site map, I'm looking at 15.
That's correct. That's why we put that condition in there to clarify that when they come through with the building permit, that they'll need to put in the 16 parking spaces.
So is there a reasonable expectation that they can squeeze one more in there?
I think there is.
Thank you.
The applicant can address that.
Right on, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. There you go. Questions? All right, thanks, Mike. At this time, I'll have the applicant come up. I have two signups. The applicant is Dick Stauffer. And Dick, you want to come up?
Don't let me touch the computers.
I was wondering who was coming up. That didn't look like you. Dick, I need to swear. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, please.
Dick Stauffer, 601 Front Avenue.
Thank you.
Miller Stauffer Architects, representing the owner applicant, Pat Acuff, whom I'm sure most of you know and is in the back of the room here. We're going to make this easier than the last one.
I hope.
This is a remnant piece that's an odd shape and a small size, and as a result of that, it gets to be challenging to develop. Most of you will know it as the piece behind Paul Bunyan Burgers. The Google aerial here, once again old, doesn't show our new park going on across the street, but it's really been fully developed with the county campus doing most of their additions, improvements over the last 10 years. The Spokesman Review building all built out on Northwest Boulevard. Even Paul Bunyan doing new and improved, not that they're there forever, but who knows. And then the park going in across the street. So it's tucked in there, and it's an odd shape, and it's a small size, and it's really going to be driven by parking. And your astute observation, Commissioner Engels, that there is going to be, and what doesn't come out in the little proposal is the assumption is that they will all be two-bedroom units. As you drop down to one bedroom or efficiency, you can gain that parking space. So that would be the strategy in going down. In a perfect world, this would be combined with another piece, but as I just said, most of this development has already happened, and so that's unlikely to happen going forward. And therefore, the developer's best option is to try and get some density out of it. And really, a fourplex or something of that nature would probably be look small and almost out of place in this location. A commercial development is going to be challenged by trying to get parking in order to park it correctly. So you get into a high-density residential, and because of the park location, because of the view across the street, because of the new park development, because of the urbanism that's kind of sweeping the country, where people wanting to live downtown and in some of these more structured and urban areas, it becomes a desirable, at least for part of the population, to live in some place like that. So we've created a little bit of an opportunity here. Same photos you saw from the staff report. Fairly tired development that is mostly non-conforming, but certainly serves a purpose, to something like this. And John, you counted correctly, we're showing 13, but maybe there's a combination of 5 two-bedrooms, and an efficiency. We could get 13 spaces out of that would make the math work there. We've done a little work on this since it was submitted to staff, so it might look like this, and we're looking back from Northwest Boulevard across from the new Memorial Field and the park areas, so it might be desirable from a view standpoint, and really a fairly light density, but county facilities building to the east, the Spokesman to the north, and Paul Bunyan directly to the west. That kind of gives that, the block in the background would be the Paul Bunyan Burgers. And I'm assuming that they would enjoy something like this as well. We understand that this commits no one to anything, but the C-34 gives the developer an option to move forward with this. Can I answer any questions?
A motion and perhaps discussion on a motion.
I think it's a good solution to a rather blighted corner.
Yeah. Regardless of what they do with parking.
So I'm ready to make a motion unless there's other comments. Are we good? Okay.
Go right ahead.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on April 10th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP-3-18, a request for an R34 density increase, special use permit in the C17 zoning district. The location is a 0.312 acre parcel located at 401 West Garden Avenue. Our findings include justification for the following criteria that are pretty boilerplate from B1 through B8 standard. And B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan as follows. It covers the community design because it's certainly an improvement. It's efficient. We'll get some small, large, and two-bedroom units in a key location in the city. It's managed growth. It'll be a good addition to the neighborhood. Even though it's not a residential neighborhood, it will certainly feed off of everything around it. It's a capital improvement, and there's city services servicing all of this area. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. As I said, it's a complement to, it's not a mirror of the neighboring properties. B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on all the findings that we've approved through the city, and that includes sewer service, water, fire, and life safety is nearby. And in conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Miller Stauffer for a special use permit, as described in the application, should be approved with the special following conditions. Water, that 1, any additional main extensions and or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the developer at their expense. Point 2, any additional service will have cap fees due at building permitting. And 3, streets and engineering, the driveway approach will need to be located, and I noticed it is as far as it can be away from that corner. And that planning, the applicant will need to meet the parking requirement for residential uses per 17.44.030 of the zoning code. Currently, we're showing 16 parking spaces as required for an 8-unit, 2-bedroom, but that seems to be a part of the development, and we'll see that as it all shakes out. And Miller Stauffer knows the rules. Thank you.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleming. Looking for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mandel. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
High-quality infill project, yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
SP-3-18, request for a special use permit to allow for density increase to R34 from a proposed multifamily apartment complex in C17 commercial district is approved. Congratulations. Nice project. Thank you. Okay, the next item is, what do we have here? Where am I? Sorry, hold on. It's a PUD-2-07M1. Applicant is Fram and Smetana, north of intersection of Canfield Avenue and Grove Way, a modification to a Cottage Grove PUD. Go ahead, Tammy. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. So again, this is a request to modify the existing Cottage Grove PUD. It's a plus or minus 10-acre parcel in the vicinity of West Pine Grove Drive and Canfield Avenue. The owner is Dennis Crowley, and the applicant is Russ Helgeson with Freeman Smetana. And the modification of the Cottage Grove PUD would allow for 5 townhome structures on existing commercial pad sites. So there are 3 requested modifications this evening. Change the designated commercial pads to residential lots for townhomes, and within the packet there's a conceptual site plan that I'll talk about. Change the configuration of 2 existing commercial pad sites, which would be done through a forthcoming boundary line adjustment or short subdivision, and increase the approved PU density by allowing 5 townhome sites, 27 proposed units within the Cottage Grove PUD development. And this is the subject property. The Cottage Grove PUD is within this yellow line. That's the boundary. The subject property is located right here, and here are the 6 commercial pad sites. And this is a closer view of the 6 existing pad sites. I've included some pictures of site photos so you can get a better idea of the location of the proposal. This is looking northwest at the single-family residences within Cottage Grove at their gated entry. Looking northeast at the single-family residences in Cottage Grove near the gated entry again. Looking north toward the entry gates of the Cottage Grove PUD along Grove Way. And as you look toward the gated entry, you can see one of the commercial parking lots that is existing there within that Grove Way along the entry, and there's one on this left side as well. This is looking northwest toward Cottage Grove entrance at the commercial pad again on this left side. Looking northwest toward the Cottage Grove entrance at the commercial pad site. And looking south from the gated entrance along Grove Way toward Canfield Avenue. And this is if you were leaving that subdivision. I've included the original Cottage Grove PUD concept, and it was proposed as 20 single families throughout time since it was approved in 2007. They've had several modifications to attach and detach the homes that are in there. Currently, there's 40 homes within that gated area. And the original approval of the commercial area within the subject property, there were 8 commercial pad sites. They did a modification a few years ago. They omitted 2 of the commercial pad sites, so there are 6 remaining commercial pad sites. This is the current Cottage Grove PUD with the 46-lot subdivision. There are 40 homes within this area, and then the 6 commercial pad sites that were approved back in the original approval of 2007. The site is fully improved with a private street along Grove Way, which is located here. Sidewalks, fences, gates, street lighting, water features, and common area landscaping were completed after the approval in 2007. So, as I noted, there are 5 or 6 commercial pad sites. The applicant is asking to have 5 townhome buildings, 3 on this side, 1 located here, and where 2 of the commercial pad sites are, they would want to do that boundary line adjustment or short subdivision, whichever is required, to turn the building facing this way and then utilize this area for parking. And this is the Cottage Grove townhome site plan that they're proposing. This area is north, Grove Way, and Canfield Avenue here. And this is how this building would be turned. So we'll need to make some findings this evening for you to make your decision on the request. The proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan designation for this area is Ramsey Woodland and stable established. And your packet includes the Ramsey Woodland today description, as well as tomorrow description and the characteristics of the Ramsey Woodland neighborhoods. And this is the map showing the subject property, which is in the stable established area. I've also included the comprehensive plan goals and objectives, and they're in your packet. The design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. This is the land use map showing that the land uses surrounding the property. This is currently vacant. The townhomes or the single-family homes are complete within this portion of the Cottage Grove PUD. They've got residential, some commercial to the south and the east, as well as manufacturing, and R17, which is the multifamily use. And this is showing the zoning map. This is the outline of the Cottage Grove PUD, and then the subject property we're discussing is located here. And the zoning is C17L to the west, and then the commercial zoning C17 in this area, and again to the north is C17L. The applicant submitted initially with the application a townhome rendering, and they have updated it since the original submittal, and this is what their proposal would look like for the Cottage Grove townhomes. They have garage doors on the front, and the owners would access it through the front. And this is another rendering for them for the proposed townhomes. When the Cottage Grove commercial piece was approved, the applicant at that time had submitted some information talking about the building character for that proposed commercial use. And your packet includes a brief description of some of the design features that it would have. Not to say that the applicant cannot submit and ask for a modification of the PUD, since they're asking to have a residential use rather than the commercial use. The proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features on the site and adjoining properties. The subject property is relatively flat. There are existing trees and open space surrounding the proposed pad sites. And the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by the existing public facilities and services. So on pages 15 and 16 of your staff report, I've included comments from fire, water, wastewater, stormwater, streets, and engineering. There were several comments also that staff received with regard to traffic and so on. And I would report that the engineering, or the city engineer, provided comments on page 16 that the existing Canfield Avenue and Grove Way does have available capacity for the anticipated traffic from the proposed development. The proposed development is actually expected to generate less traffic than the previously approved commercial lots. That the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open spaces determined by the commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, and parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreation purposes. I've also included in your staff report the diagram that was submitted to me by the applicant. They're showing in the property or the subject property area, this green area is going to be open space as depicted in that color, as well as the existing open space throughout the Cottage Grove PUD located in these areas, noted in the green. And this is a better view of the proposal. Staff would require with the final development plan being submitted that they do meet that 10% open space requirement. Finding B8F, off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for users of the development. The applicant would need to meet the city code requirements for the parking requirement, and as you can see in the diagram, what is going to be required depending whether they're 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom, or more than 3-bedroom units. They would need to meet the parking requirements. That the proposal does or does not provide for an acceptable method for perpetual maintenance of all common property. There is an existing HOA within the Cottage Grove PUD. One of the conditions you'll see on the last page of my staff report requires that this development be included in that original HOA and provide their CC&Rs, or if they do create a new HOA and it's formed, then they need to submit that information to staff for review to make sure that that open space is maintained. And there are 3 required conditions for this proposed modification from planning, water, and fire. And the action alternatives, the Planning Commission must consider the request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. Any questions for me?
Can you go back to the plan that showed what I thought was green space, but it looked like they rendered all the parking and everything green, that one? The green space is really in between the buildings, not all that green that's parking lot, is it not?
This is an interesting comment you make because I went through many staff reports, and when this was approved, it looks as though, and I also looked on the plats too, that the tracks N and tracks P, which were noted differently in earlier approved plats, for part of the open space. So when they go through to submit their final PUD, we're going to need to be assured that they do meet the 10% open space.
Okay.
And a portion of it may be part of that common area noted on the plat, but staff's going to need to verify that. As well as for this townhome or proposed townhome, if they're going to utilize this area, that would not also be utilized for open space.
Do we need to restate that as part of our final findings? Because that doesn't tell us true story.
You could probably, we could add a condition stating something like, you know, verification of meeting the 10% required open space.
Okay.
Tammy, if you could perhaps go back to,
This
in our packet, there's, it's on page 13, and it's directly above.
sketch plan.
You know, the front elevation of the rendering by the artist, but of course, right above there is the hand-drawn by the architect, the layout of the site, including some of the potential proposed parking spaces. I'm guessing it's coming up pretty quick.
I hope so.
There
That's
you go,
it. Yeah,
that's it.
there we go.
That's more the true story, I believe, of what we have in the way of
Yeah, because it certainly does
hardscape and-
appear that there is going to be green space behind and around on sides and whatever else. But again, that
Doesn't really tell a
might
story.
answer the concern, but at the same time, I think to have it placed as a condition wouldn't be a bad
The
idea
applicant will
either.
be able to speak to this a little more, but I have had several discussions with him throughout the day as I went back through some of the older plats just to verify that they would have that 10%.
Okay.
And that's 10% only for this part of the development. We assume that the
It's-
rest of the development, or do
it's
we
the-
have to do the cumulative development to
It's
make
the
sure?
overall development.
It's the
meaning
whole
10%.
development, so we have to make sure that that 10% is accounted for the entire development.
Yeah, and this
So-
area will not be modified, so they need to take this in account, and then
Okay.
whatever remains here.
Has to make the 10%.
That's correct.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, as I went through earlier staff reports, I did notice that some of the comments, you know, from the narratives talk about this common area being part of that.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Question, Tammy, kind of similar to the last hearing is where I'm coming from, you know, where I looked at the site plan, the little sketch that Commissioner Ward drew your attention to, the little hand-drawn deal. You know, I'd like to look on there and see a number, but it's just a little kind of, it's not an engineered drawing, it's a sketch. So I can't count up the number of parking and make a quick analysis in my mind that, you know, 27 units drive so many parking spaces, and I can't see that there. But when it comes time to permit, you are going to require that the city's standard for parking is met in those lots, correct?
That's correct. And I spoke with one homeowner in particular many times, talking about the parking requirement, and that as it comes through as a building permit, we would verify that. The garage would be counted as a stall, whether it's 2-stall or 1-stall, and then behind that door can also be tandem parking. And then it's dependent whether they have 1, 2, or 3 units per building.
Thank you. So there has been some questions that we got in advance having to do with parking, and you know, staff will make sure that the city standard is met at permit time
That's
in
correct.
those lots. The other comment that we got, a number of people looked at the rendering, the artist's rendering, and they weren't really happy with the colors and this and that. And again, there's kind of a parallel maybe with the last hearing, correct? That even though we have an artist's rendering, and I think the second one is a better fit personally than the first one, just like the previous hearing, we don't lock that in here. There's not an expectation, let's be clear, that we don't lock that in. We're not going to try to take color samples out later and make sure it follows that sketch in here. It's illustrative, correct?
That's correct, but you need to keep in mind also that in 2011, that sketch that I submitted, or the building character, was included in the narrative. And it was important that I insert that because a lot of the folks sent comments in with concerns about that. And it talked about the construction reflect the rustic character of the Pacific Northwest. The facilities, both residential and commercial, will be detailed with timber, stone, and shingled roofing. But that's not to say that the applicant who purchased this property cannot come forward and request a modification of the use and the design as such, because we do allow for a modification of those PUDs.
So unlike the previous hearing, there is a little bit more lock-in, if you will, with respect to some nature of character. And again, my sense here is that that second or updated illustration of character is more on the mark than the first one. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Tammy.
Welcome.
At this time, I'm probably going to bring up the applicant and/or owner. They both signed up, so either Dennis Crowley or Russ Hagelson, who'd like to come up. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Name and address, please.
My name is Russ Helgeson. My address is 2642 East Cherry Hill Road. I'm with Freeman Smetana Engineering. I'm the applicant's engineer. Dennis Crowley, the owner, is here, along with kind of part of the development team, Bill Graves, and Tim Wilson, who's also the architect and has provided the renderings that you looked at. Just Tammy alluded to it a little bit, but just kind of a real brief history that this has been before this commission multiple times over the years. The very original one was in about 2007, where it was 22 residential lots. They are actually meant to be duplexes at the time. They built one of those at the time. That was kind of when the market changed. And then there was the 8 commercial lots. So it sat for several years. They came back in about 2011, 2012, went from the 22 residential lots to 40 residential lots, and then went from 8 commercial lots down to 6 commercial lots. And then in 2014, they came back one more time. The original developer was going to sell the residential lots, and so that last PUD or modification, all it really did is add a property line separating the residential lots from the commercial lots. Up until that time, the open space was kind of one single tracks on either side of the road, that kind of weaving around the different building lots. So at that time, there was a distinction to really separate the commercial side from the residential side. And since that time, the residential area has been built out and nothing happened really on the commercial side. Just kind of through all those processes from the initial, all the infrastructure has been put in, it's been in use. I guess the main, or kind of the key thing there is the residential portion of Cottage Grove has a gate on either side of the residential portion. The gate in is off of, I lost the name of the road there, sorry, Pine Grove, West Pine Grove. And then the gate that's kind of internally on Grove Avenue is a one-way gate, so the residential people can go out, but nobody can go in that. That gate does not go, or doesn't open if you want to enter that direction. So that again provides another separation between the residential and the commercial kind of sides of Cottage Grove. As noted, kind of the reason we're coming to modify the PUD is because obviously nothing has happened commercially in there. The new owner here is looking at creating the townhouse residential units with 27 units there. And then the other big change is configuring, kind of eliminating 2 of the existing building sites and making one building site to better fit kind of the townhouse concept that they've developed. To address the concerns that I've been made aware of, the city passed along 4 different comment letters that they received. All of them were strictly from the Cottage Grove residential side. There was no other comments from outside of Cottage Grove. Looking at the concerns that, at least my understanding of, as I reviewed them, really fell into three categories. One was the concern for parking, and as Tammy mentioned, for 2 or 3 unit townhouses, each unit requires at least 2 parking spots, and each unit will have an enclosed garage, so that would account for one of the spots, and they'll have that driveway portion that will meet the second spot. And then also kind of utilizing the existing parking areas that will, not all, some of them will be removed, but to accommodate this, but using the existing parking lots that are already there, will add somewhere in the neighborhood, and John, I think you mentioned, it's hard to tell from that one sketch exactly how many is, and I looked at what the existing parking spots are versus what will have to be removed, and so it's hard to come up with a hard number, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 additional spots will still be available in there beyond the garages and the driveway parking spots. So there'll be quite a bit of additional parking beyond just what's the minimum requirement. The other thing that, and this wouldn't count for any additional parking, but it addresses some of the concerns that people brought up, is one of the conditions that came out of the original PUD was to use, because of a narrow road, not to have on-street parking, but they purposely put rolled curbs through there, and there's some parking spots, kind of parallel parking spots on the sides of the roads that are up off of the curb line. There's concrete parking areas, and then the sidewalks are beyond that. And in this portion of Cottage Grove, there's another approximately 9 parking spaces in those kind of side road. I don't even know how to.
Is that the colored concrete in the
Yeah,
photographs?
yeah, it's that
like a
stamped
peachy colored
concrete.
stamp?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was.
So that's a pull-up.
Yeah, it was intended to be parallel parking.
Good place for snow removal, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that exists both in the commercial side and in the residential area.
Wow.
The second kind of general comments, concerns that were in the letters that the city forwarded to me was just talking about the character of the building, the colors, the design, and again, the previous PUD has specifications of how that is. As you saw, the architect recently provided additional renderings. We're still at a very preliminary stage of this. There has not been actual architectural plans that have been developed for it other than the renderings themselves. So there's obviously time to continue to look at that. And then also, Tim Wilson is here if there's any actual questions regarding more architectural looks. That I'm just an engineer. I don't know how things look. The last category of questions and concerns were kind of lump in under a need for an HOA, homeowners association, and CC&Rs for this part of the development. And the intent is to create an HOA just for this side of the Cottage Grove development, and there would be CC&Rs that would also be developed for this that would relate to, kind of deal with issues of maintenance of the open space, allowable parking requirements, everything that kind of fits in those, in CC&Rs and HOA things, kind of governing the common space there. And I guess the last thing I wanted to just touch on was kind of that open space question that came up. I don't know why, but all through the different variations or revisions to the PUD, they've always, the open space has always been lumped together with the parking that's part of it that was developed for the initial commercial spots, along with the accesses to all kind of behind all of the residential houses. Why the parking was not separated out, I don't know, other than it was just always kind of lumped together as kind of the combined open space. I don't have calculated numbers of the open space less the parking or driveways. I mean, just looking at it, I don't know how to get to that green picture.
It's way up there.
Maybe Tammy, could you get us to that green picture? Just the one, the colored,
No, it's back. Deja vu.
yeah, that one. So there is, I guess I'll walk away from the mic for a moment and just. So the parking would be like.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, they can't hear you on the, you gotta be by the mic, otherwise.
And you can use.
Well, I know.
I got long arms, but it's not quite that long. Oh.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Use the mouse.
If you would prefer, you always go that way.
Okay, this will work. So there'd be parking here and along here, in this area here, and in here. So there's still a lot of space around the perimeter of those buildings. So without, like I said, without having a calculated acreage right now, my gut feeling is that we would exceed the 10% at this time. I mean, that's about the best I can tell you at this point. So with that, unless you have questions for me at this point.
Good.
No questions?
Nope, we're good.
Okay.
No questions, thanks, Russ.
Great, thanks.
Maybe I should ask him.
I have Josh Beebe in favor, and he doesn't want to speak.
Oh, he is coming up.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, please, Josh.
My name is Josh Beebe. I reside at 2540 West Sorbonne Drive in Coeur d'Alene. I think I've been in front of you guys a few times on this project. I represent the initial developers, been involved since day one with Merritt Brothers, and I know there's some residents that live in Cottage Grove, and kind of the message I wanted to get across is when 2008 hit and the light switch went off, we were really cautious of what we did with that project. That sat from 2007 to 2011, and all we did was mow the grass. Excuse me. When we decided to sell that ultimately to Viking Construction, we were very cautious on who we sold that to because we had a vision of what we wanted. Viking did a great job. As the commercial project went on, we kind of had the same issues. We wanted to make sure with whatever happened there, we were cautious. And we've had a lot of people approach me wanting to buy that. We didn't like the uses. This applicant came along and we felt it was the best for the development, for the current residents of Cottage Grove, and for that, we support the project. If there's any questions you guys have of me, since I've been involved since day one, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Wayne and Cheryl Smith. They're neutral, and I take it they don't want to speak? No? Okay, thank you. Dennis Palumbo is in favor, and do you want to speak? No? Okay, thank you. Dorian Bailey, you do not want to speak? No? Okay. Tim Wilson says if there was questions. Nope. No? Okay. Chris Schneider, yes. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Name and address, please.
Chris Schneider, 1105 West Grove Way in Cottage Grove. Prior to this meeting, the commission asked that one person represent our total community's interest at the meeting and provide collective input on the proposed project. Before I do that, I just want to make a couple of introductory comments. I appreciate Russ's summary of the history of the development. There are 40 homes, and the majority of the residents live here year-round. Most are retired, and we do have an HOA led by a volunteer board of homeowners. The Homeowners Association received written input from over 30% of our homeowners, and most of this correspondence, as was mentioned, has already been sent directly to all of you. So I may be repeating some of those comments tonight, so bear with me. Secondly, as a community, we knew this property would eventually be developed. Because of the parking lots, we assumed it would be professional office space, similar to what already exists. It does seem that the townhomes, particularly at this price point that they're proposing, is a good option. We believe the future owners of these townhomes will share the same pride of ownership in their community as we do in ours, and they'll have the same desire to maximize not only their property values, but also the quality of their overall living experience. So my comments, further comments, are basically in two categories. We were asked to provide input on the project, and then we also have some questions that some have already been mentioned regarding the parking that we'd like to get some clarification on if possible. Our input really falls into 6 areas. Most of those have already been mentioned. First is our concern about the exterior design, colors, and appearance. We have felt that the modern design and color shown in the original renderings we saw, which we had not seen the newest revised ones, weren't consistent with the look of our community and the surrounding offices, apartments, and homes. We request that the townhomes have a more northwest feel, utilizing earth tones, more horizontal versus vertical siding, and more traditional accents versus the modern accents. That'd be our preference. In terms of landscaping, we realize that the drawings are initial renderings, but as with the exterior design of the townhomes, we'd request that the overall landscaping maintain a woodsy feel, consistent with the surrounding area. We encourage the developer to maintain as many of the large trees as possible to maximize the green space and sufficient landscaping to create an overall attractive appearance. Regarding the portion of Grove Way that's outside of our gate and exits onto Canfield, there are a number of questions from our association about that area. One, is, of course, is the parking that's already been brought up. There are going to be up to 54 or more vehicles, and it doesn't appear from what we've seen so far that there's sufficient parking for each townhome without residents parking on Grove Way and or on the north side of Canfield outside the exit. So just as a note, I just got a note while I was sitting there, in our community, our HOA doesn't allow parking on the stamped concrete because of damage to it, oil drips, and those type of things. So we're concerned about the parking on Grove Way from the townhomes on the street. We also had questions whether there be any restrictions on boat and RV parking, and it was good to hear tonight that there's going to be a full review of CC&Rs and hopefully make them compatible with our subdivision as well. Now, the exit from Grove Way onto Canfield was mentioned earlier in terms of traffic. We feel that it's an already unsafe intersection, primarily because of cars that park on the north side of Canfield. So when you come out to exit to make a left or right-hand turn, you don't have good visibility of oncoming traffic. And because of the increased traffic from the townhomes, we'd ask the city to restrict parking for a reasonable distance on both sides of that exit so that there's sufficient visibility to make it safe for all of us to turn. Remember, in our HOA, most of us are retirees, so we'd appreciate consideration for the senior citizens and making sure that we all have good visibility to get out of that exit. Continuing with the Grove Way questions, we own our portion of Grove Way and are responsible for all the costs. I hope because I'm summarizing everybody else, I get a few more minutes.
I'll give you a couple minutes, sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So we take care of our costs of that road. Will the proposed development own their portion as well, or will it revert to the city? That's a question that we have. Can our use of that portion of Grove Way be limited or restricted by the new development in any way? And we'd like to have some input at least, or input on the plans for maintenance of the road, the snow removal, if there's any way we can coordinate some of those things, because we're both communities are doing the same things. So those are our questions about the Grove Way portion. Privacy, there were some questions raised by those owners that are by the exit gate, and wondered if the developer was going to make any considerations for them in this project at all, possibly a privacy or a fence or a hedge. We were also told by the city that there would not be dumpsters on the property, so we assume their location is not an issue. Two more points. I appreciated the summary of the Grove Way, or the Cottage Grove development. And our original community, as Russ said, were to be townhomes, so the infrastructure, the sewers, the cable, the water, etc., were installed on that basis. When the development became single-family homes, it required modification, resulting in some problems, some with the sewer, some with the cable, and some other issues. Some of the infrastructure in our community is also connected to the infrastructure in the proposed community. We had irrigation issues because our timers controlled their irrigation. Some of our street lighting was the same, and we had to make some changes there. So because of that experience, a number of our HOA members expressed concerns that the new development wouldn't negatively impact our shared water, sewer, cable, and electric systems. Now, this is my first Planning Commission meeting, and I know you have codes and requirements, so we appreciate that that'll be looked at as well. Finally, our Cottage Grove CC&Rs restrict short-term rentals, VRBOs and Airbnbs. We'd recommend that a similar restriction be placed on this development as well in their CC&Rs. That's just a request we would make in terms of their planning as well. Thanks for your consideration. We appreciate being able to share our comments as well.
Okay, thank you. Bill Graves, in favor, wish to speak? Hey, Bill. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, please, Bill.
Bill Graves, 3645 Idlewild Loop, number 4, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Appreciate Mr. Schneider's comments. That, you know, just like Mr. Beebe had mentioned to the council members, you know, I've looked at that project as a commercial real estate agent many times over, thinking, you know, what could go there? How come it hasn't gone there? Why has it been stagnant? Which brought us to the light of this is a perfect opportunity to build townhomes. You know, it is not in any way our intentions to take away from the existing neighborhood that is there, both architecturally, we've got landscape comments, we've had paint color comments, which I found it kind of ironic that if we can get to the slide of the northwest, that building. This building looks rather brown, but if you drive by it, these doors are red and this color is orange. You know, in our original drawings, we showed a black and a red, or black, white, and red rendering. You know, I think that at the end of the day, our developer should be able to put whatever color that he deems on these things, as long as it complies with the existing neighborhood that's there. Just next door, there are blue and red apartments. Just behind Cottage Grove, there are bright yellow apartments. You know, so I think for us, it's just, it comes down to, let's do the right thing with this piece of property, not overtake the density, address the parking issues that have been brought up, that, you know, we've looked at some things, and right now I think that we're probably more at about a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio with parking, so I don't think that that's going to be an issue. The CC&R comments that have come up, you know, their CCNRs versus what we plan to do with our CCNRs. You know, it's very simple. Don't allow on-street parking on Grove Way. We don't need it. We have plenty of parking there. So I think that, you know, through the time and the process of this, we'll address those issues that have come up, and I think at the end of the day, everyone will be happy. Thank you.
Any questions? Thanks, Bill. Dennis Crowley, wish to speak? No? No. Okay, thank you. Russ or Tim, do you want to address any of the issues that you heard, or you are good?
I don't have a lot more. This is Russ Helgeson, just for the record, but other than as we develop the HOA and the CCNRs that go with that, it makes a lot of sense to coordinate with the existing HOA. So things like road maintenance and snow plowing, you know, rather than having two snow plows come up to a mutual gate and have to figure out how to turn around and push snow away from the gate, it makes sense to coordinate those. And so I think as we develop those CCNRs, we'll definitely want to work with the current residential HOA. One of the questions I think that Chris brought up that there was just a question was, will that road get turned over to the city? I don't believe the city would accept it with the narrow roadway, and we have no intention to ask the city to take it over. So it would remain that portion of Grove Way that's in this part of the development would stay private. And so that would, part of that HOA then would be to maintain that road. So just kind of to answer that question. Other than that, unless there's other questions.
John.
I do have a question. I don't want to throw a fly in the ointment, but in summarizing everything I've digested both before I got here tonight and all the testimony, huge opportunity here for you know, partnering and working together, and it sounds like there's real good energy there to try to do that, and you know, maybe you know, willingness to not have parking on Grove, and you know, these artist renderings. You know, I think there's a balance between, you know, not being overreaching and over restricting, but some good faith effort, and I've already seen what, you know, it looks like some effort there to try to be good neighbors and all that. The only question I have left that could be an issue down the road is, you know, this Grove is a private street.
Correct.
And each of these developments, the single family and then this new townhouse, kind of are going to operate separately, two different HOAs and whatnot. So if I was the buyer of the new, you know, 6 pad south portion, I own that portion of Grove. It's not a private, it's a private street, so I own that dirt, correct?
Correct.
So what enables the residents in the single family beyond the gate to the north the right to pass through there? Or is there going to be some kind of protection for those folks in the form of an easement that they have recorded that preserves their right to transit that portion of Grove?
That's a really good question that obviously has not come up in the earlier versions of the PUD and the different modifications, but
because
it seems like
in all rights, I could buy that and shut that gate, and that's the end of it. I mean, we have to be cautious, and we've learned over time that, you know, these private roads can be kind of difficult. I think as a condition we should add that easement be recorded that enables and preserves their right to transit there.
And without turning around and looking at the owner, I would think he would be open to that. I mean, to a condition.
Sorry to throw that fly in there,
Yeah.
but we've had other situations around town where that has been a big deal.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
I see staff over there going back and forth. You can help us out here a little bit.
Yes, we were just looking at the plat, excuse me, and they are 2 different tracks. So that is a concern potentially, that the tract O is within this subject property and the other one's a different tract. So I think an easement would help to ensure access for.
So if we added a fourth condition that says that prior to recordation of final plat or polling permits or at some juncture, an easement in favor of the North HOA be recorded to preserve their vehicular access through there.
Perpetuity or something.
Yeah,
forever.
perpetuity, because,
Yeah.
yeah, just current owners,
Would
has to
that
be
be
future owners.
acceptable?
Well, we can still ask the owner, he's here, if you care to. If not, then he's good. I got a thumbs up.
The owner just gave a thumbs
Have
up,
a thumbs
so
up.
he's very
That's
open to
good.
that.
That's
Okay,
good.
let's put that in there. Good
Thank
point,
you.
John.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, Russ? No? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm going to close public testimony right now and ask for a motion and perhaps more discussion, and then a second.
Possible to have one more comment?
I'm sorry?
Would it be possible, I did fill out a sheet, but could I just make a comment?
Sure. Just make sure you fill out the sheet later.
Gotta reopen.
I'm going to reopen public hearing.
Sorry about that.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Absolutely.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Erin Wiest. I live at 1822 East Grandview Drive in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
And I originally bought and built on 2 lots in the Cottage Grove subdivision. I'm nervous.
Don't take it easy. We're all friendly
And
here.
I'm not here representing our community. I'm just here to comment on my own behalf.
Sure, no problem.
Behalf. One thing I noticed was on the green space, being 10% of the overall development. We have driving gates, and we also have walking gates. And this is my first planning meeting, so I really don't know how this works. But is the green space, is that just for aesthetics for the overall subdivision, or is that in hopes that people would be able to access it and use the green space? It's just aesthetically? Yeah, because there isn't any access to our.
It's for the development's use, and especially in a gated community, it's just for that gated community. It's no guarantee to outsiders to come in and use your park. It's
Okay.
specifically behind the gate, since you've privatized that ownership. It is your parks and green space for your usage.
But where our gate stops before their subdivision begins, when you're considering a percentage, I
It'll all be
heard that-
cumulative, and it's whoever's adding it up.
Okay,
It's
so
a
it's
tricky
the gate
calculation.
doesn't matter when you're considering that, okay?
No.
And then my next comment is just simply for the builder in the design of the development, and that is initially Cottage Grove was the Northwest Lodge look, I mean, and still is to this day. The original subdivision, as earlier mentioned, was platted for townhomes. And when you first pull in our entry gates, we have a nice Northwest Lodge townhome there. And I would hope that he would consider perhaps instead of 27 units, that he might consider doing something like the 2-unit Northwest Lodge townhomes extending out. And on that note too, an optimal plat for that, that would be a nice addition to our neighborhood, would be just to continue our neighborhood right around the corner, move our gate to Canfield, and continue the aesthetics that we already have.
Well, we can have that discussion with the owner and see kind of what he's willing to do to help out the existing neighbors that are there now. It's the best we can suggest. I mean, we can't, I don't really put any type of conditions or anything like that to say move the gate or things like you mentioned and their concerns, and, have a conversation. And I have the impression that hopefully the owner is willing to have that dialogue, because he still has to work with staff to finalize his plan for that and get the parking, which is a concern that has to be done correctly. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Thank you.
Sure. I appreciate it. You're welcome. Okay, I am going to close public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners to have discussion and hopefully a motion.
Well, I think this is a great development. I think it's great that we can recoup something that's been sitting idle for too long, and it's great to breathe life into an area and renew a community that's obviously very proud of itself. And I also have to reiterate that we don't do design, and we leave that to the experts, and that you've had a chance to send your message forward, and that the owner more than likely will listen, but they won't roll over. And so hopefully this unique townhouse solution will be forward-looking and not all backward-looking, and that it's fresh. I think it'll be a special place to live, and maybe it's more than just, maybe it's new millennials. It's people who want something a little bit special. So I'm delighted to see this product coming through. I think we are very short of townhomes, and I am all about this, because I hope someday to downsize. So I'm looking at it. And also the HOA will stand on its own merits. We have to count that this owner has his own mindset on what he wants to do for that HOA. So to predicate it on your HOA is an imposition. It is a free market, and he has to develop his own market and find out who his buyers are and who's going to come to the party. So he's heard all of you, what you have to say. I think he's going to pay attention to a lot of those details, but you can ask, but you may not receive. So, but thank you for all the opinions. They were great. So, sounds like a great neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have some comments on the project? Hopefully this gets approved, and it'll be in addition to that vacant piece of land that's been there. I've been in that subdivision, or in Cottage Grove, and done some work on some of the homes in there, and it's a unique piece of property, actually, in the way they develop that, and hopefully that will continue on to this new piece, and it complements the rest of the neighborhood, and that dialogues can be open with the new owners and the existing owners. And as far as HOA and CC&Rs, that's something you guys got to work out amongst yourselves. As Commissioner Fleming said, we don't have much say on that, and hopefully you guys can work all that out, and hopefully this will be developed, and it'll be a nice addition to that area, and that you get the parking on Canfield somewhat under control. There's not much we can do about that, and you talk to the city about it at times, because I am familiar with that area. So best of luck to everyone involved in this. So have some discussion. I'm looking for a motion from someone. Go ahead, John.
I made the condition. I'll go ahead and crawl through this thing if I can. So motion that PUD 2-07M, request for modification of plan unit development known as Cottage Grove PUD, be approved. Applicant Russ Helgeson, Raymond Smetana, for plus or minus 10-acre parcel in the vicinity of West Pine Grove Drive and Canfield Avenue. Motion, we adopt the findings as stated in the staff report B1 through B8 verbatim. B8B, that we make a finding that this action would be in conformance with the comp plan, and that it ties in nicely with all of the elements or objectives listed in our findings worksheet, with particular, as Commissioner Fleming points out, the efficiency of use of existing infrastructure. 1.14 is a very strong element, as well as neighborhoods and housing elements are strongly supported. B8B, that the design and site plan is compatible with the location and setting of existing uses on the property, and we've seen some collaborative work there and some evolving architectural renderings that would suggest that the bulk and height and density and architectural style and such are compatible. B8C, that the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site. Site is kind of already developed. Expectation there is a flat site, maintain existing landscaping as much as possible, so it would be compatible with the natural features. The location, size, design of this proposal will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. City engineer points out that the traffic load would actually be less than the permitted use or the current PUD use of commercial, so that the traffic actually goes down, and all of the other departments have weighed in saying that utilities and such are adequate. B8E, the proposal does provide the 10% open space subject to staff verification, we heard. And B8F, off-street parking requirement would exceed the minimum. B8G, that the proposal would provide for an acceptable method of perpetual maintenance of common property through the creation of a standalone HOA. So the planning condition pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of Russ Helgeson be approved.
We need that easement thing in there.
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
It's coming.
I'm hurrying.
It's coming.
I'm hurrying.
Don't hurry. Take your time. We have a few minutes.
And
On the fourth condition.
the motion then would include the three motions listed in the worksheet, one having to do with the HOA, the other having to do with extending water mains, and the other from fire on extending fire hydrants. Those are pretty customary, with a fourth motion. Condition, thank you. A fourth condition that an easement be recorded in favor of the Cottage Grove North single-family residents to preserve their ability to, in perpetuity, to transit the south portion of Grove, or words to that effect.
Onto Canfield Avenue.
Onto Canfield Avenue.
Both by vehicular traffic.
Both by vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Thank you.
Good job.
That's the motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Ingalls. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Fleming. Roll call.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, PUD 2-07M 1, modification to Cottage Grove PUD Plan Unit Development has been approved. Thank you for your time. Best of luck to the developer and the neighbors working everything out. And call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
No, I don't want this thing.